My beloved child, wait, pause here, hold this second gently, because something rare is unfolding right now. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, the way destiny usually arrives. You've heard people talk about success like it's a staircase, step by step, year by year. But what if that was never true? What if the real turning point happens in 60 seconds? Elon Musk didn't build empires by thinking longer. He built them by thinking deeper, briefly, intensely, deliberately. A single minute. That's the rule most people ignore because it feels too small to matter. But listen carefully. The mind is like a launch pad. Most people stand on it all day, scrolling, doubting, consuming noise. Nothing lifts off. But Musk learned something early. Before action, before emotion, before fear, pause for 60 seconds and ask one ruthless question. What is the most important problem right now, and what is the truth about it? Not what feels good, not what others believe. Truth. In that 1 minute, distractions fall away, ego dissolves, excuses collapse, and suddenly, clarity appears. Think about it. How many lives are shaped not by years, but by one clear decision made in a quiet moment? What if this very minute is asking something of you? Most people rush because they're afraid of silence, but visionaries slow down, just long enough to see what others miss. This is why the 60-second rule feels invisible. It doesn't impress. It doesn't trend. It doesn't shout. Yet it builds billionaires. Because in that minute, Musk separates signal from noise. First principles from inherited beliefs. Reality from illusion. He doesn't ask, what's popular? He asks, what's necessary? And when you do that consistently, your decisions compound faster than time itself. Stay with me a little longer. You might miss the turning point if you don't. Because the next part reveals why this rule rewires your future, not gradually, but suddenly. What if this moment is already working on you? Hold on, slow down. This is where most minds slip away without realizing it. People think success comes from motivation, but motivation fades. What doesn't fade is clarity. Elon Musk uses 60 seconds not to hype himself up, but to strip everything down. No emotion, no story, no identity, just truth. Imagine pausing for 1 minute before every major decision, before sending that message, before quitting, before saying yes, before saying no. In that minute, you ask, if all assumptions were removed, what remains? This is first principles thinking. It's uncomfortable because it exposes false beliefs you've been living inside for years. Most people inherit their limits. From parents, from culture, from fear disguised as advice. But in 60 seconds of honest thought, those limits crack. That's why Musk can attempt what others label impossible. He's not braver. He's clearer. Here's the secret no one tells you. Speed comes after clarity, not before. When you know the truth, decisions become fast. Action becomes clean. Energy stops leaking. And suddenly, progress accelerates. If this perspective is opening something in you, gently support the channel. Share your thoughts, leave a comment, or subscribe so this journey continues together. No pressure, just alignment. Now listen closely. The 60-second rule doesn't change your life in the moment you use it. It changes the trajectory, like adjusting a rocket by 1 degree before launch. At first, nothing seems different, but miles later, the destination is unrecognizable. This is why people say success looks like luck. They never saw the quiet minutes where direction was chosen. Ask yourself, when was the last time you gave truth 60 uninterrupted seconds? Not multitasking, not scrolling, not performing, just stillness and precision. Wait till the final moment, because the next part reveals how to use this rule daily, without effort, without pressure, without losing yourself. Before you go anywhere, hear this line: the future listens to the thoughts you repeat in silence. Pause, breathe, this is the part where everything connects. You don't need more hours. You don't need more motivation. You don't need permission. You need one deliberate minute, repeated. Here's how the rule becomes power. Every day, choose one moment, morning, night, or before a decision. Set a silent timer. 60 seconds. Ask only this: what matters most right now, and what is the honest next step? No judgment, no drama, no overthinking. The mind will resist at first. It prefers chaos. It keeps you distracted and safe. But stay, because after a few seconds, something shifts. Thoughts align. Priorities sharpen. The noise thins. This is awareness training. And awareness is the real currency of the future. Elon Musk didn't chase billions. He chased precision. And precision compounds. When you practice this, you'll notice something strange. You'll start making fewer decisions, but better ones. You'll say no more often. You'll move faster with less effort. People will ask how you changed. You won't know how to explain it, because the change didn't happen publicly. It happened quietly, in minutes no one saw. You'll understand everything at the end. Success isn't built by doing more. It's built by seeing clearly, before acting. So when the world pulls at you, pause. When fear rushes in, pause. When opportunity appears, pause. 1 minute. Truth. Action. This is the 60-second rule. And if you don't ignore it, it won't ignore you. Stay aware. Your future is already listening. Wait. Before you move, something just shifted. That question you've been holding since the last part, it's still open. You felt it, didn't you? The quiet realization that 1 minute can bend an entire future. Now let's return to the mystery. If 60 seconds can clarify truth, why doesn't everyone who knows this rule become unstoppable? Here's the first reveal. Listen slowly. Most people use the minute once. Visionaries protect it. Elon Musk doesn't treat those 60 seconds as a trick. He treats them as a gate, a threshold between impulse and intention. Because the power isn't in asking the question. It's in asking it every time it matters, even when the answer is uncomfortable. Pause. Let that land. Here's the next shift. The 60-second rule doesn't remove fear. It reveals whether fear is useful or false. And once you see that distinction, fear loses control. This is why clarity feels almost supernatural. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It simply points. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Think of your future self, 5 years ahead, standing where you are now. They're not asking you to work harder. They're asking you to stop rushing past truth. Because speed without direction is just noise. Another revelation, quiet but sharp. Every empire Musk builds starts the same way. Not with ambition, but with alignment. Truth aligned with action. Action aligned with timing. That's why the minute matters more than the hour. Why awareness outperforms effort. Why stillness becomes strategy. You might feel a strange calm right now. That's not accident. That's recognition. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that you're closer than you think, but only if you slow down just enough to see. If this message resonates, you know where to find the next one. Now listen, because here comes the final wave. The 60-second rule isn't about productivity. It's about identity. Each time you pause and choose truth, you vote for a different version of yourself. One who leads their own mind. one who doesn't outsource thinking, one who acts from clarity, not chaos. Over time, those votes compound. And one day, you wake up living a life that once felt impossible. But there's one truth still missing. The minute only works if you respect it, not as a habit, but as a promise to yourself. Before the next part, something must be revealed. And when it is, you'll never look at time the same way again. Stay present. The final connection is closer than it appears. You were meant to hear this section most of all. Right here, before momentum pulls you away, pause. Because the missing truth from the last part is still hovering, unresolved. You remember the promise, don't you? That the 60-second rule only works if it's respected. But respected how? Here's the first reveal, and it's subtle. That minute isn't for answers. It's for alignment. Most people demand certainty before they move. Visionaries move once their inner compass stops shaking. In that minute, Elon Musk isn't searching for comfort. He's checking coherence. Do the facts align with reality? Does the direction align with physics, logic, and truth? If not, he waits. Or he redesigns the question. This is why the minute feels powerful. It refuses to lie to you. Here's the next shift. Stay with it. The 60-second rule trains your nervous system. Each pause tells your mind, I lead here. Not impulse. Not urgency. And over time, your brain rewires. You stop reacting. You start choosing. This moment may explain what you've been sensing lately, that subtle impatience with shallow thinking, with borrowed opinions, with noise that leads nowhere. Another reveal, quietly futuristic. In a world accelerating faster every year, the rarest advantage isn't speed. It's precision under pressure. AI will get faster. Systems will automate. Information will flood. But the human who can pause, extract truth, and act cleanly, that human becomes irreplaceable. That's the real billionaire mindset. Not money, first. Mind, first. Let the tension ease for a second. Because here comes hope. You don't need to be Elon Musk. You don't need rockets or factories or headlines. You only need sovereignty over 60 seconds. 1 minute before decisions. 1 minute before reactions. 1 minute before fear tells its story. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Those minutes stack quietly. They form a rhythm, a signature way of moving through the world. People won't know why you feel different to be around. Why your presence feels grounded. Why your actions seem inevitable. It's because you stopped outsourcing your thinking to chaos. Now the final reveal. Listen closely. The 60-second rule is not about time. It's about trust. Trusting that truth appears when you give it space. Trusting that stillness is not weakness. Trusting yourself enough to pause. And when you do, life starts meeting you halfway. Opportunities sharpen. Decisions simplify. The path narrows, but forward. You'll understand at the end why this rule has always existed, hidden in plain sight, ignored by the rushed, mastered by the aware. But there's one truth still missing. Because the most powerful 60 seconds aren't the ones you plan. They're the ones that arrive unexpectedly, when everything is on the line. Before the next part, something must be revealed. And when it is, you'll see exactly when your moment arrives. Stay present. The signal is closer than you think. Listen, before another thought interrupts. This is the moment everything leans toward. You've been circling a question since the last part. When does the real 60 seconds arrive? How do you know it's the one? Here is the first reveal. You don't schedule the most important minute. It finds you. It shows up disguised as pressure, as uncertainty, as a crossroads no one else can see. That's when most people rush. But the few who build futures, pause. This is where Elon Musk's rule becomes alive. In that instant, when stakes are high and clarity feels distant, the 60-second pause becomes a shield. Not against failure, against misalignment. Stay with me. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Here's the second reveal. The brain under stress narrows vision. It defaults to habit. But a deliberate pause reopens the field. 1 minute returns you to first principles. What is real? What is necessary? What is the simplest true move? That's why Musk can make decisions others call impossible. He isn't gambling. He's seeing wider. Now feel the tension release, because hope enters here. You've already practiced this. Every time you stopped yourself from reacting, every time you waited before speaking, every time you sensed a deeper answer beneath the obvious one, those were fragments of the rule working through you. Another reveal, quiet, but powerful. The 60-second rule is not about thinking harder. It's about listening better, listening to reality instead of assumption, listening to truth instead of fear. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that life keeps offering pauses, but you've been taught to rush past them. Here comes the next unlock. The future favors those who can hold still inside motion. While the world accelerates, awareness becomes leverage. That's the hidden advantage billionaires share. Not money, not luck, presence. Let that settle. Because now we reach the edge of mystery again. The most dangerous illusion is believing the minute ends when the timer ends. It doesn't. The real effect unfolds after, in the action you take with quiet certainty. This is why the rule feels invisible from the outside, but unstoppable from within. You'll understand at the end why this has been following you through the entire story. Now listen carefully. The 60-second rule is not a tool you use. It's a state you enter, and once you recognize it, you start living inside it. But there's one truth still missing, a final distinction that separates those who glimpse clarity from those who build legacies with it. Before the next part, something must be revealed. And when it is, you'll know exactly why this minute chose you. Stay present. The final unlock is approaching. You were meant to hear this section most of all. Not later. Not someday. Now. You've been holding a question since the last part, even if you couldn't name it. What is the final distinction? What separates those who touch clarity from those who build entire futures with it? Here is the first reveal, soft, but decisive. Clarity alone is not enough. It must be honored. Most people experience moments of insight. Few reorganize their lives around them. Elon Musk doesn't just see clearly for 60 seconds. He restructures reality around what he sees. Pause with that. Because this is where tension returns. The mind loves insight. The ego loves inspiration. But the body resists change. This is why the rule fails for many. They pause. They see truth. Then they return to old patterns. Here comes the next unlock. The 60-second rule only becomes legacy when it is followed by non-negotiable action. Not dramatic action. Aligned action. One decision made cleanly. One commitment honored fully. One direction chosen without second guessing. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. This is why Musk can move through chaos without fragmentation. Once clarity appears, he doesn't debate with doubt. He executes. Not emotionally. Precisely. Here's the hope. Listen carefully. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You only need to stop betraying the moments when you know. That quiet inner yes. That subtle inner no. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that your frustration isn't from lack of ability, but from ignoring your own clarity. Another reveal, almost invisible, the universe responds faster to aligned action than to effort. When thought, decision, and movement agree, resistance dissolves. That's when progress feels inevitable. Now feel the mystery return. The 60-second rule trains you to recognize truth in real time, not after consequences, not in hindsight. And once you can see truth as it arises, you become dangerous to stagnation. You might feel something shifting right now. That's awareness stepping forward. But there's still one truth missing. A final realization that explains why some people build empires quietly, while others chase motivation endlessly. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Something simple. Something final. And when it is, you'll understand why this rule doesn't just build billionaires. It builds architects of the future. Stay here. The last door is about to open. Wait, before you move forward, feel this moment. Something subtle is aligning. You've been carried here by a question that hasn't fully spoken yet. What is the final truth, the one still missing? You remember the edge we reached. Clarity honored becomes legacy. Action aligned becomes momentum. But why do so few ever cross that line? Here is the first reveal, gentle, but complete. The 60-second rule isn't powerful because it changes decisions. It's powerful because it changes who decides. Most people live as reactions. Visionaries live as authors. That 1 minute isn't a pause from life. It's a return to authorship. Let that breathe. Because here comes the tension. The world trains you to respond instantly. Messages, metrics, noise, urgency everywhere. But urgency is rarely truth. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Here's the second reveal. Elon Musk doesn't win by thinking faster than others. He wins by refusing to be rushed by illusions. That refusal, repeated, becomes identity. And identity shapes destiny more than effort ever could. Now feel the hope rise. This means you don't need to escape the world. You don't need silence forever. You don't need perfection. You only need to reclaim 1 minute, again and again, until presence becomes natural. Another unlock, quietly futuristic. In the coming years, attention will be the rarest resource. Not money, not data. Attention. And those who can place their attention deliberately, even for 60 seconds, will quietly outpace everyone else. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that the future doesn't belong to the loudest or the fastest, but to the most aware. Now listen closely. The 60-second rule is not a hack. It's a filter. It filters truth from noise, signal from distraction, intention from impulse. And once that filter is installed, your life begins to feel guided, not controlled, not forced, guided. You'll understand at the end why this feels familiar, because you've touched this state before. In moments of deep knowing, moments you didn't ignore. Here's the final reveal of this part. The rule doesn't build. You'll realize this was never about Elon Musk. It was always about the minute waiting for you. Stay present. The last signal is approaching. Hold still. Right here. This is the section you weren't supposed to rush past. Something is resolving. You can feel it tightening into focus. You've been carrying the question from the last part. If this was never about Elon Musk, if it was never about money, then what was the minute really preparing you for? Here is the first reveal, clear and grounding. The 60-second rule is not a method. It's a mirror. In that minute, you don't discover the future. You discover your relationship with truth. And that changes everything. Most people avoid mirrors. They prefer momentum. Momentum feels like progress, even when it's misaligned. But visionaries stop long enough to see themselves clearly. That's the tension. And here comes the release. When you can face truth for 60 seconds, without flinching, you gain something rare. Self-command. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Here's the next reveal. The world rewards consistency, not intensity. And consistency is born in moments that feel too small to matter. That quiet pause before speaking. That hesitation before committing. That breath before reacting. Those are the minutes that shape character. Character shapes decisions. Decisions shape destiny. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that your life hasn't been waiting for a breakthrough, it's been waiting for alignment. Now let hope expand. Because alignment isn't loud. It's gentle. It feels like relief. When your thoughts stop fighting your actions. When your actions stop betraying your knowing. Another micro reveal, simple, but profound. The 60-second rule works even when nothing changes on the outside. Because something irreversible changes on the inside. You begin to trust yourself. And once that happens, hesitation fades. Now the mystery returns, soft, but undeniable. Most people think legacy is built later, after success, after proof. But legacy begins the moment you stop abandoning clarity. That's why some people change the world quietly. They didn't wait for permission. They waited for truth, and moved. You'll understand at the end why this feels like remembering something you already knew. Here comes the final wave. The minute doesn't ask for discipline. It asks for honesty. And honesty, practiced repeatedly, becomes power. Power not over others, but over direction. Now lean in. Because there is still one truth missing. A final recognition that turns this rule from insight into inevitability. Something so close it's been invisible the entire time. Before the next part, something must be revealed. And when it is, you'll realize the 60 seconds were never separate from you. They were always waiting for your consent. Stay present. The final alignment is almost here. Stay, just for a breath. This is the point where the circle closes. You weren't pulled this far by accident. That question from the last part is still open, quietly asking for one thing. Consent. You've seen it now, haven't you? The 60-second rule was never about time management. It was never about strategy. It was about permission. Here's the first reveal, clean and undeniable. Nothing changes until you agree to see clearly. Not once, not occasionally, but as a way of being. Most people touch truth and retreat. Visionaries touch truth and stay. That's the difference. Now feel the tension soften. Because this isn't about pressure. It's about relief. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. The 60-second pause is you saying, I choose awareness over autopilot. I choose truth over speed. I choose authorship over reaction. And once that choice is made, the future begins rearranging itself. Here's the next micro reveal. Elon Musk didn't wake up one day and become decisive. He trained decisiveness by honoring small moments of clarity. 60 seconds. Again. And again. That's how identity forms. Quietly. Inevitably. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that your life isn't asking for more effort, it's asking for alignment with what you already know. Let hope rise gently. Because alignment doesn't exhaust you. It energizes you. When you stop fighting your own clarity, momentum becomes natural. Action becomes clean. The noise loses its grip. Another reveal, subtle, but powerful. The minute doesn't demand perfection. It only asks for honesty. And honesty, practiced consistently, becomes wisdom. Wisdom doesn't rush. It recognizes timing. Now the mystery deepens again. Most people wait for confidence to act. But confidence is a byproduct of acting from truth. That's why the rule works backward from how we were taught. Pause first. See clearly. Then move. You'll understand at the end why this feels less like learning and more like remembering. Because you've always known how to do this. You just forgot to give yourself space. Here comes the final wave of this part. The 60-second rule doesn't promise success. It promises integrity. And integrity creates a life that compounds. Quietly. Relentlessly. Now lean in, because even here, at this point, there's still one truth missing. A final recognition that turns consent into commitment, and commitment into destiny. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Something that doesn't arrive through effort, but through readiness. Stay present. The final signal is almost clear. You were meant to hear this section most of all. Not because it's louder, but because it's quieter than everything before it. That lingering question from the last part, the one about readiness, it wasn't asking when. It was asking who. Here's the first reveal, steady and clear. Readiness is not a feeling. It's a posture. Most people wait to feel ready before they act. Visionaries act from clarity and let readiness form around them. That's the shift. Now feel the tension rise gently, because this is where many hesitate. The 60-second rule doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It waits for inner agreement. When thought stops arguing with itself. When the signal becomes clean. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Here's the next reveal. Elon Musk doesn't look for certainty. He looks for enough truth to move without self-betrayal. That's it. Not total knowledge. Not guaranteed outcomes. Just alignment strong enough to carry the next step. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that your delays weren't laziness, they were misalignment. And once alignment appears, movement feels obvious. Now let hope enter again. Because alignment doesn't demand bold leaps. It invites precise steps. One conversation taken seriously. One decision honored fully. 1 minute respected completely. Those are the building blocks. Another micro reveal, soft, but powerful. The 60-second rule teaches you how to recognize readiness in real time. Readiness feels calm. It feels grounded. It doesn't rush you. Urgency shouts. Readiness whispers. And when you learn the difference, you stop confusing pressure with destiny. Now the mystery returns. Most people believe the future arrives suddenly, but the future actually reveals itself gradually, to those who pause long enough to notice. You'll understand at the end why this process feels less like chasing success and more like removing interference. Because that's what readiness really is. The absence of internal resistance. Now listen carefully, this is important. The 60-second rule doesn't push you forward. It clears the path. And when the path is clear, movement becomes inevitable. You may feel a quiet confidence forming right now. Not excitement. Not hype. Something steadier. That's readiness settling in. But even here, there's still one truth missing. A final recognition that explains why readiness appears only after consent, and why consent only matters when it's tested. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Something that only shows itself when clarity meets action. Stay present. The final threshold is closer than it seems. Pause. Before you lean forward, something just crossed the line. You've been approaching a threshold this entire time. The question from the last part is still alive. What happens when readiness finally meets action? Here is the first reveal, quiet, but unmistakable. The 60-second rule is never tested in silence. It's tested in motion. Clarity feels easy when nothing is at stake. But the real moment arrives when the world pushes back. Deadlines, opinions, resistance. That's when the minute reveals its true power. Stay with this. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Here's the second reveal. When clarity meets friction, most people retreat. They reinterpret truth to feel safe again. Visionaries don't. They allow resistance to refine the signal, not erase it. That's the difference between insight and execution. Now feel the tension rise, gently. Because this is where self-trust is proven. The 60-second pause doesn't remove uncertainty. It gives you a stable center inside it. And from that center, action becomes grounded. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that your fear wasn't about failing, it was about acting without inner agreement. Another micro reveal, simple, but sharp. Clarity that isn't acted on fades. Clarity that is honored strengthens. Each time you move from truth, trust grows. Each time you ignore it, doubt multiplies. This is not punishment. It's feedback. Now let hope return. Because feedback means you can adjust. You can realign. You can pause again. That's why the rule is forgiving. It doesn't demand perfection. It rewards sincerity. Here's another unlock. Futuristic, but real. In a world where decisions are increasingly automated, the human advantage will be conscious choice. Machines optimize. Humans orient. The 60-second rule trains orientation, knowing why you're moving, not just how. That's legacy thinking. Now feel the mystery re-enter. Most people think action ends the pause. But for visionaries, action extends it. Every aligned move becomes a new point of stillness. A new place to listen. A new minute to refine direction. You'll understand at the end why this doesn't feel like pressure anymore. Why it feels like momentum without force. Because force was never the point. Here comes the final wave of this part. The 60-second rule isn't about choosing once. It's about choosing again, in real conditions. When clarity meets resistance. When readiness meets reality. That's where futures are actually shaped. But even now, there's still one truth missing. A final insight that explains why some people can act cleanly under pressure, while others lose themselves in the noise. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Something that only appears after you move once from clarity. Stay present. The final integration is closer than it appears. Listen. Before you settle into understanding, something subtle just revealed itself. You crossed a line without realizing it. The question from the last part wasn't about pressure or resistance anymore. It was about what appears only after the first aligned step. Here is the first reveal. Soft, but decisive. Clarity deepens after action, not before. Most people believe they must see the whole path to move. Visionaries move just far enough, and let the path respond. That's when the signal sharpens. Feel the tension for a moment. Because this is where hesitation hides. The mind wants guarantees. Reality offers feedback. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Here's the next reveal. The universe doesn't reward intention alone. It responds to alignment in motion. When you act from truth, new information appears. New doors surface. New clarity arrives. That's why those who pause wisely seem guided. They aren't guessing. They're listening while moving. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that your uncertainty wasn't a lack of insight. It was waiting for commitment. Another micro reveal, quiet, but powerful. Once you take one clean step, the 60-second rule evolves. The pause becomes faster. The signal becomes clearer. What once took a minute, takes seconds. That's mastery. Now feel hope rise again. Because this means you're not late. You're not behind. You're simply entering the phase where feedback replaces doubt. Here's another unlock. Elon Musk doesn't operate with constant certainty. He operates with constant correction. Pause. Act. Observe. Refine. That loop is the real rule. The 60-second pause is the entry point, not the destination. Now the mystery returns, deeper than before. Why do some people receive clearer signals the more they act, while others feel more confused the more they try? Here's the answer beginning to form. Clarity responds to respect. When you honor what you see, even imperfectly, reality reveals more. When you ignore it, the signal fades. You'll understand at the end why this feels less like motivation and more like a relationship. Because it is. A relationship with truth, with awareness, with yourself. Now listen carefully, this is important. The 60-second rule doesn't end indecision by force. It ends it by trust, building. Each aligned action proves something quietly powerful. I can rely on myself. And once that belief settles, momentum stops being fragile. Here comes the final wave of this part. The most successful people aren't fearless. They're responsive. They pause. They move. They adjust. And with each cycle, their inner signal grows stronger. But there's one truth still missing. A final realization that explains why some people receive guidance at every step, while others feel stuck even when they try. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Something that only becomes visible when clarity, action, and feedback finally align. Stay present. The final understanding is about to surface. Wait, before your mind tries to conclude anything, something just shifted again. That mystery from the last part is still alive. Why does clarity seem to respond to some people, while others feel like they're walking in fog? Here is the first reveal, calm, but precise. The signal strengthens for those who listen consistently, not perfectly. Most people listen once, then demand certainty forever. Visionaries listen, act, adjust, and listen again. That cycle changes everything. Feel the tension rise gently here. Because this is where expectation distorts perception. The mind wants answers to arrive loud and final. Reality speaks in refinements. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Here's the second reveal. Clarity isn't a destination. It's a feedback relationship. Each time you pause honestly, each time you move from what you saw, reality responds with more information. That's why some people feel guided. Not because they're special, but because they're responsive. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that when you ignore small truths, life feels silent, and when you honor them, doors seem to open. Another micro reveal, subtle but powerful. The 60-second rule sharpens discernment, not answers. You stop asking, what should I do with my life? And start asking, what is the next true move? That shift removes overwhelm. Now let hope settle in. Because this means you don't need a grand vision to move forward. You need precision, presence, respect for the signal. Here's another unlock. Elon Musk doesn't rely on inspiration. He relies on signal integrity. When data changes, he changes. When truth updates, he updates. That flexibility is strength, not weakness. Now the mystery deepens again. Why do some people cling to certainty even when it fails them? Because certainty feels safe. But clarity requires humility. The 60-second rule quietly trains humility. It says, I don't know everything, but I'm willing to listen. You'll understand at the end why this willingness is the real advantage. Here comes another wave. When you stop forcing outcomes, your attention becomes sharper. Your timing improves. Your decisions feel lighter, but more accurate. This isn't magic. It's alignment. Now listen carefully, this matters. The signal doesn't grow louder because you want it to. It grows clearer because you stop interfering. You stop overthinking. You stop rushing. You stop betraying what you already know. And in that space, clarity returns. But even now, right here, there's still one truth missing. A final distinction that explains why some people eventually live in constant alignment, while others keep restarting the cycle. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Something that doesn't come from effort or intelligence, but from consistency of inner honesty. Stay with this moment. The final understanding is approaching, and it changes how everything fits together. Hold on, before you let this settle too quickly. Something just aligned beneath the surface. That question from the last part is still echoing. Why do some people eventually live in constant alignment, while others keep circling back to the beginning? Here is the first reveal, simple, but decisive. Clarity doesn't fade because it was wrong. It fades because it wasn't revisited. Most people treat insight like an event. Visionaries treat it like a relationship. That's the shift. Feel the tension rise gently. Because consistency sounds ordinary, unexciting, invisible. Yet consistency is where the 60-second rule transforms from insight into identity. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Here's the second reveal. The signal doesn't disappear when life gets busy. It gets buried under neglect. When you stop pausing, stop listening, stop checking alignment, the world doesn't punish you. It simply grows louder. This moment may explain what you've been sensing. That confusion didn't arrive suddenly. It accumulated quietly. Another micro-reveal, calm but powerful. Consistency isn't repetition of action. It's repetition of awareness. Pausing again, asking again, choosing again. That's how clarity stabilizes. Now let hope return. Because this means alignment is never lost forever. It's only unattended. The 60-second rule brings you back. Every time. Here's another unlock. Elon Musk doesn't rely on motivation to stay aligned. He relies on ritualized awareness. Not rigid routines, but reliable pauses. Moments where truth is invited back to the table. That's why clarity compounds for him. Now the mystery deepens again. Why do some people resist consistency? Because consistency removes excuses. It removes the drama of not knowing. It reveals what you already understand. And that can feel confronting. You'll understand at the end why most people avoid this. Not because it's hard, but because it's honest. Here comes the next wave. When you return to the pause daily, the signal stops feeling fragile. It becomes familiar, trustworthy, immediate. You no longer need to search for direction. You recognize it. Now listen carefully, this is important. The 60-second rule isn't about discipline. It's about self-respect over time. Each pause says, my awareness matters. My clarity matters. My future is worth one honest minute. And those minutes stack quietly, until life begins responding differently. Opportunities feel cleaner. Decisions feel lighter. Momentum feels natural. But even here, at this point of understanding, there's still one truth missing. A final realization that explains why consistency itself eventually becomes effortless, and why some people no longer need to remind themselves to pause. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Something that turns the 60-second rule from a practice into a permanent state of being. Stay present. The final integration is closer than it seems. Wait, before you settle into certainty, notice this shift. Something feels different now. That question from the last part hasn't vanished, it's changed. When does consistency stop requiring effort? Here is the first reveal, quiet, but profound. Consistency becomes effortless the moment identity takes over. At first, you pause because you're trying. Later, you pause because it's who you are. That's the crossing point. Feel the tension dissolve slightly. Because effort was never meant to last forever. Effort is a bridge. Identity is the ground. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Here's the second reveal. The 60-second rule doesn't stay a rule. It becomes a reflex. You stop forcing stillness. Stillness finds you. Before decisions. Before reactions. Before words leave your mouth. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that you're no longer chasing clarity, you're recognizing it as it arrives. Another micro reveal, simple, but transformative. The mind learns by repetition, but the nervous system learns by safety. Each time you pause and choose alignment, your system learns, I am safe when I listen. That's why resistance fades. Now let hope expand fully. Because this means growth doesn't always feel like struggle. Sometimes it feels like relief. The relief of not fighting yourself anymore. Here's another unlock. Elon Musk doesn't wake up reminding himself to think clearly. He's conditioned his system to default to first principles. Not because he's superhuman, but because he practiced long enough for it to become natural. That's available to you. Now the mystery returns. Soft, but unmistakable. Why do some people never reach this state? Because they abandon the pause too early, right before it integrates. You'll understand at the end why most people quit practices at the exact moment they're about to become effortless. Here comes the next wave. Once the pause becomes part of you, life feels less reactive, more intentional, more timed. You begin to notice patterns earlier, opportunities sooner, misalignment before it costs you. This isn't prediction, it's sensitivity. Now listen carefully, this is important. The 60-second rule doesn't give you control over life. It gives you coherence within it. And coherence is what allows momentum to flow without force. At this stage, clarity no longer feels fragile. It feels stable, portable. You carry it into rooms, into conversations, into decisions that once overwhelmed you. But even here, right at this level, there's still one truth missing. A final realization that explains why some people stay aligned under pressure, while others regress the moment stakes rise. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Something that only appears when identity is tested by intensity. Stay present. The last refinement is approaching, and it changes how you hold everything that came before. Stay, just a little longer. This is the moment everything becomes clear without needing explanation. That question from the last part, the one about holding clarity under pressure, it's ready to answer itself. Here is the first reveal. And it's quieter than you expect. Pressure doesn't break alignment. It reveals whether it was real. Anyone can pause when life is calm, but visionaries pause even when the world accelerates. That's the difference. Feel the tension soften, not disappear, but settle into something usable. Because here's the next truth. The 60-second rule was never meant to protect you from intensity. It was meant to anchor you inside it. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Elon Musk doesn't slow down when stakes rise. He stabilizes. And stability under pressure is the rarest skill on earth. Now let hope rise. Not the loud kind, the steady kind. Because this means you don't need to avoid difficult moments to stay aligned. You don't need perfect conditions. You only need one thing, to return to yourself before you respond to the world. Another micro, reveal, simple, final. At the highest level, the 60-second rule disappears. There is no pause. There is no technique. There is only presence before action, truth before movement, awareness before choice. This moment may explain what you've been sensing all along. That the goal was never to master time. It was to master attention. Now breathe into this. Because attention is where your life is decided. Not in years, not in plans, But in moments just like this one, here's the revelation that ties everything together. The rule builds billionaires not because it creates wealth, but because it creates inner leadership. And inner leadership attracts everything else naturally. Money follows clarity. Opportunities follow coherence. Impact follows self-trust. You'll understand at the end why this journey felt less like learning and more like remembering something ancient and familiar. Because humans have always known this. Before noise, before speed, before distraction, there was awareness, then action. Now the mystery returns one final time, but gently. You don't need to wonder when your defining minute will arrive. It already has. It arrives every time you choose to pause instead of react. Every time you choose truth instead of comfort. Every time you choose alignment instead of momentum. That is the minute that builds legacies. And here is the final truth. The 60-second rule doesn't belong to Elon Musk. It never did. It belongs to anyone willing to lead themselves before trying to lead a future. But there's one truth still missing. Not one to learn, one to live. And that truth will reveal itself the next time the world asks you to rush, and you choose, calmly, to pause. Stay aware. That moment is closer than you think.